Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Calgary Business Podcast powered by Sonic Coaching. I'm your host, Oliver Basner. Well, I'm actually really excited to be sitting here with an entrepreneur right here from Calgary, Saawan Logan. So Saawan is the co-founder and CEO of local glacial water company. I had to pronounce that perfectly for you, called North Water, and has been featured in Avenue Calgary magazine, as well as being awarded the Business Leaders Award of 2025. So welcome and congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right in. So let's start with your younger years. Like, where'd you grow up? What was that like? What were your parents like?
So I grew up in Fiji, a tiny island in the South Pacific, very close to Australia. Came from a middle-class family and had a very basic, simple childhood. And there are lots of days I wish I could go back to that childhood. So simple life, playing in the ocean, playing around, growing up with a very carefree, very island lifestyle. So that
sounds amazing.
It was different.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah, it was different from what I'm sure kids have here.
Awesome. And then I know you didn't intend on being an entrepreneur right out of the gate. You were a senior analyst in the energy sector. So tell us what made you decide to make the jump. And for our listeners, how do you know when to make that jump?
Yeah, so two parts to this question, obviously. I think I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I wasn't somebody who ever wanted to be one. My dad had a business and he had an accident when I was in my early, not even a teenager then. And so his accident didn't allow him to work for quite some time. And so my mom ended up looking after my dad, and that kind of left me to become the breadwinner of my family at 14. So I became an entrepreneur at 14, running his business. And so I think that was my start to the entrepreneurial journey. And even at that time, of course, at 14, you're not thinking that, hey, I'm an entrepreneur and I will be an entrepreneur. You're in survival mode. So hence, an accidental entrepreneur. So that survival mode, I was too young to look at myself as a business person or as an entrepreneur. All I knew was that I was trying to put roof over our heads and get food on the table is the only thing I knew. And as I started getting older, I recognized what brought us there. And one of the things, the realization was that, had my dad wasn't a businessman and had a job somewhere else, maybe life would have been different.
Right.
Maybe he would have had, different life insurances and savings and something else that could have kicked in. And he had savings, but it didn't last us for as long as his disability did.
Right.
And so, all those thoughts led me to one thing, which is I was never going to be an entrepreneur. I was never going to have my own business. I was always going to work for somebody.
And have that security, so to speak.
And have that security, because financial insecurity was my biggest insecurity in life. Because it's the only thing I knew that was different than a childhood that I had. And so, I graduated. I did my degree in accounting. I got my CA, and then I went into oil and gas when I moved to Canada from Australia. And then I basically ended up working in oil and gas for a number of years. I met my business partner on the board of a charity where we both were volunteering. And we would talk about doing more, doing something different in terms of what does the world need? How do we kind of do something different? And I always, on my hikes, I drink out of the springs and the creeks and whatever flows around me.
Right.
And I always used to think, why does the world not know us for water? And so I said to her, I've always thought of water because I said, the water here is next level. I've never had something this delicious. So why don't we do this? Why don't we both start a bottled water company? And then it was we don't want plastic. We were very against plastic. And so in one of my trips to Japan, I found aluminum. And they do aluminum coffee bottles, small coffee bottles. And so I came back and I said, why can't we do aluminum, but in larger format? And so by the time we found that, we were already excited. Would wake up in the morning. I would wake up on Sunday morning at 5 a.m. and run downstairs and start writing a business plan as to what it could look like. And before I knew it, just putting those thoughts onto paper very quickly became actions. So that leap, I think, happens when you start documenting what you're thinking and start acting on it.
Right.
You don't really fully open up a business the next day. It's those little tiny leaps, right? Like, yeah, today it's a business plan on paper that, I'm going to start a bottled water company. You're researching your market. Who would you sell to? To the next day, you're like, okay, I now need a name. Now that you've done your naming process and come up with a name, you're like, okay, now I need to register this thing. Okay, then what's next? And before you know it, you're in it. So that's how you make the leap. You don't leap, you just crawl one day at a time.
Yeah.
One action item at a time.
One step, basically.
One step.
Yeah.
And some people don't get to the last step of actually launching. I know many people who have the idea, who would register their business or trademark their name and would actually never come up with the final product that hits the shelves or hits the market. And that's okay too, because in any part of your journey, if you realize that this isn't it, if you're not committed to take it to the end, there's no way you're going to be committed to see it beyond that.
Right.
So, I think that it's always a good thing whether you start or you don't start.
Right. I heard you say something, like all of a sudden there was a passion, right? You were passionate about it. And so how important do you think that is as an entrepreneur to keep you going? Because I'm guessing hasn't been all easy. I know it hasn't been all easy. You and I have talked about it. We'll talk about that a little more later. So,
a passion plays an important role. Many would say, obviously passion doesn't translate into revenue.
No.
It's very different. They're two different tools. What passion does do is passion allows you to get up regardless of what's going on around you.
Right.
I think passion is more of a motivator than it is an actual revenue generator.
True.
Right?
Very well
But
said.
it gives you grit. Passion gives you grit because it gives you, you're so into it that you want to see it successful. So you do everything you can because it brings you joy somewhere. It makes you fulfilled. That's passion.
It gives you the creativity to keep going too,
Of course,
right?
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, passion is important, but passion doesn't translate into revenue, which is what every
Profitability.
business needs. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it doesn't.
Yeah, that's what keeps you going is the revenue. So.
It's profitability, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Northwater. So, you talked about how it started. How are you different? Like, there's a lot of water out there. I know you're not in plastic bottles, which is fantastic. Tell us about the water.
Yeah. So for us, we've always focused on the water being the hero. We always say that what sets us apart is our source and our water. We have a very clean glacial source.
Yes.
The Rockies has great quality water. And so for us, that's our hero. Our water is our hero. Because our packaging can be done by anybody. You can recreate that, Can't stop that. But how do you refill your bottle with the exact product? So that's kind of what we have always taken pride on, is our water itself. We don't treat the water. We don't really do anything to it. It goes through a filtration system,
Right.
UV light, but it's not a water that has anything added to it or stripped out of it. It's served the way it is. And so that is a unique thing to find. A lot of bottled water companies either take tap water and they do reverse osmosis. Canada is lucky it has got a lot of spring water here, spring water brands here. So in the Canadian market, it's really hard to sometimes for people to differentiate who's who and what they offer. But in the larger context of the world, you don't have that. And we in Canada also take our tap water for granted too, which is always clean and for the most part, for some of us, not everybody in Canada, obviously. But I think for us, we've got a great source from the Canadian Rockies and water that is filtered over 18 million years because that's the age of the Canadian Rockies. And the glacier that we get our water from is that old. If that's not a story, then what is?
Hopefully it lasts a long time so you can keep filling.
It will last a long time. It will last a very long time.
Perfect.
Again, it's just whatever overflows, whatever is the melt, it's not a thing of someone taking an ice pick to it.
No, of course not.
So
you've got flavored water, which I've had, and it's fantastic.
Thank you.
So, when you and I spoke about it, I was surprised how good it was. So what makes yours so different than everybody else's?
Yeah, so we don't like to think it's flavored water. We like to think it's just pressed fruit with water.
That's what it tastes like.
That's what it is. So it's freshly pressed fruit with water. So it's 50% fruit and 50% water, which is very unusual. The beauty of it is it's local fruit. So it's fruit from British Columbia right now. So apples and cherries and blueberries. And I tell my clients who buy the product that don't expect flavors to be, the fruit to be consistent. So they will be a little different each time. Don't expect the same fruit next year. So don't hold on to a cherry and be like, oh my gosh, I love cherry and gonna get me cherry again next year, because
But next year's blueberries maybe.
might be peach, might be blueberry, might be nothing. I mean, nature decides that. I don't. And that's the beauty of it, because it's all purely freshly pressed fruit and our carbonated water. That's it. No additives, no preservatives, nothing to it, no other flavors. Hence, it tastes very clean and just a better for you product. And we started that because we realized that the zero-calorie world is such a hard space, because what zero-calorie and what natural flavors mean, natural flavors means a whole whack of chemicals you're dumping into something. Flavor agents is what...
But they're not listed on the ingredients sometimes,
you're not
correct?
required to.
Right.
Because most things get lumped as a natural flavor,
Right.
stevia included, right? So if you have like some sugars and things that can go into it, and you could have a jug of lemon flavored juice,
Right.
with lemon flavor. It's not lemon, it's lemon flavor.
Right.
But you're not required to state it. So I made a product for somebody who was in the non-alc world, and he had a zero-calorie product. And when we used to make it for him, we realized that it had like 16, 17 different ingredients.
That were listed, they were all under the flavor.
Natural flavors. And a lot of them were like chemically derived, obviously, colors and all of these things that no one could pronounce. They had a name like Red 60235 or whatever the names were, or lemon, Prosecco powder, like things like that, which you're like, well, again, to get to a flavoring, you're creating something that has about another 20 things that make that one flavor.
Right.
So yes, you might be only adding 5 jugs of something, but that 5 jugs probably has 200 ingredients behind it, which we don't see.
Whereas yours has real fruit.
Ours just has fruit and water, sparkling water. So technically 3 ingredients, because water has carbon dioxide in it that we use to carbonate, and fruit. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's it's like eating a fruit that it has calories, it's real, it's got sugar. Yeah, so does apple and cherry.
Absolutely.
But it's not added sugar. I'm not pouring something. I can assure you, I'm not pouring something out of a bag or a jug.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of that product.
Well, and I've been to your plant, and I can attest to that. Right.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you liked it though.
No, it was, as I say, I mean, if our listeners haven't tried it, they have to go try it.
Yeah.
So, you and I talked a little bit sort of when tariffs were first hitting, and I know you were quite concerned about the impact it was going to have on your business, because again, aluminum gets quite expensive when you add a bunch of tariffs to it. And and I, not necessarily wanting to talk about tariffs, but let's talk about, there are tough times in growing a business, and how do you get through the tough times? Like what should our listeners prepare for, and how do they keep resilient when that happens?
And that's a good question, because I ask myself that pretty much every day, because every day you can't plan these things. You can't plan that somebody's going to go attack Iran and fuel prices are going to skyrocket. And not just fuel prices, you are going to have shipping challenges, because now you've got a whole area that is under threat, that can't really ship, can't go through. You have got aluminum pricing, or metal pricing, aluminum in our case, because one of the largest smelters was burned down. Aluminum pricing being the highest it's been in 20 years or something like that, right? So you have those things that you really can't control. I think the way I have done it, and that has worked for me, is that I have really learned to shut the noise, which is I'm very much driven by, okay, something is going on and I either need to pivot, or I need to find a solution, or I just need to ride it. And so you have to choose. Are you going to pivot? Are you going to ride it? Or do you have a short-term solution for it while you're riding it? Because you can't just ride it and hope for nothing, or you don't have a solution and you have to ride it, right?
Right.
But how are you going, what are you going to do with that?
To get through.
To get through. And so you just have to put one foot in front of another and know you will do it. You'll get through it. Because just the same way something has changed on you, it's the same way it's going to change again, or there'll be another new thing. If you keep losing sleep on all of it, then you will never survive. So like as an entrepreneur, the first thing I think of is like, okay, yeah, it's a deterrent, it's an issue, but I'm not going to compromise my health on that issue, because my health trumps my business, right?
Yes,
So
it does.
so I have to separate what's within my control and what's outside of my control. And then I can only focus on like, okay, what can I influence here? And that's what I'll go after. And you find that sometimes in what you can influence takes up so much energy of yours that you don't even notice what's going on around you that's failing. Yeah, you feel the impacts of it. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes that those things don't work in your favor and you don't survive. That can happen too.
Of course.
And if that happens, then it's just how things have happened.
Yeah.
You have to accept the outcome of things that you cannot control, and if it's spiraling out of control, and be okay with that outcome, knowing that you've done everything you can,
Right.
and that's your limit. So it's finding that own peace, own space in your own mind and your own life to accept things the way they are, and only be able to change what you can change. Focus on what only you can change.
So it's back to the old saying, right? Like, worry about the things you can change, and the things you can't change, no point worrying about them.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
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 No, that's
So
great
remind
advice.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your business partner, Linda.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier how the two of you met. How do you stay aligned? Like, have you ever had disagreements? And
Oh, a lot.
How do you figure out through?
Yeah.
How do you get a tiebreaker when there's two of you? Right?
Well, you know what? We're both very different individuals. If you've met us, you would know.
And I've
anyone
met
who has,
Linda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're very different. And, she's a person who is always very much in the detail, and I'm more of a big picture person. And so, yeah, and sometimes, your business partner is like a colleague of yours who you spend a lot of time with. The difference between a work colleague and a business partner is that work colleague and the company decides who stays, who goes, and what your interests are and all of that.
Yep.
You don't have to think about it. Whereas as a business partner, it's like a marriage and a work at the same time, because you're making all your decisions together. And yeah, we do butt heads quite a bit. Like, it happens because we're two different personalities. But the fact that we both work for a shared goal
Yes.
allows one of us to always back off, because we always know that one person has a better way of doing something which I may or may not agree upon, or she may or may not agree with, but we accept that the other person has a better solution. And sometimes it's a hit to the ego as well. And sometimes you also choose, like, what battle do you want to be in? Right? What matters, what doesn't matter? It's the same as the world. You choose, like, okay, well, she wants blue and I want green. Can I settle for green? Or does it matter to me that blue really matters to me? We also have our areas as well that we focus on. Like, my area is a lot to do with, like, the branding, how the look and feel of the product, the words that are used to describe the product. Her area is more operations and finance.
Right.
So we do give each other the space in our own area of expertise. Sometimes operationally we may not agree, though.
Right.
Right? So yeah, that happens. It's choose your partners wisely, because same as you've got to choose your spouses wisely, right? People separate, and so do business partners.
Yeah, it's interesting you said, the blue versus, because it's just like a partnership or a marriage, right? I mean, is the wall going to be blue or is it going to be pink, for instance, right? And so, and I agree with you. I mean, I've seen partnerships, in the work that I do as an executive coach, I've seen partnerships fail, and I've helped them actually separate as amicably as we could, right? Because they couldn't get to that agreement, right? At some point the egos weren't willing to let go, right?
Yeah,
You mentioned ego earlier.
absolutely. Yeah,
And so picking the right partner is critical, because if you pick the wrong partner, your failure will accelerate.
Absolutely.
It'll be much quicker.
Yeah.
Right?
And I always have a deciding question in my life with her, and I don't know if she has the same with me or not. She might have lots of things to say about me too, which I know she does.
I don't know, I haven't asked her.
Yeah, you should ask her, actually. I'm curious. Now I want to know what she'd say about me. But every time her and I have had disagreements, which is more than you'd think we do, because again, we're two very different people.
Well, and you said she's very detailed, so she's
very
looking
detailed.
at the probably the small details that need to be looked at.
Absolutely.
And when you're probably more at the bigger picture.
Yes, absolutely. I'm selling people a dream of tomorrow with my product.
Right.
She's showing me the reality of what my numbers look like.
Exactly,
right?
making sure you still stay afloat.
That's right, exactly. So I think I have an appreciation for her role, and I recognize that we cannot function without each other.
Right.
Because in any company to survive, you need that combination. And the contrast of that combination means you will not see eye to eye on everything. Some things you would,
Right.
some things you wouldn't. So while we're very different, we're also complementary because we need the two to work together. Every company needs a vision, and every company needs to know they're present and realize where they truly stand today.
Right.
And so you need both. So that's always my realization. But the thing I always ask myself is, if we do have a day of like a complete thing of disagreement upon, I always ask myself the one question: if I had to do it all over again, would I do it with her or not? And my answer is always yes.
That's a great question.
Yeah. So that to me is when I take a step back and say, yeah, that's okay, because I value what she brings to the table. I value her as a person. And I wouldn't start this business. If I had to start all over again today, it would be only with her and nobody else.
Right.
So.
Well, she's a keeper then, right?
She's
As
a
a business
keeper.
partner.
She's a keeper as a business partner, and I would, I
So
trust
Linda,
her.
if you're listening, she's she's not looking to get rid of you.
No,
Saawan's gonna keep you for a
no,
while, so.
No, yeah, and she brings a lot to the table, more than I
Perfect.
do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Excellent. No, that's great advice, and I, like I say, I love that question. So, can we shift gears for a minute?
Sure.
Because I don't know when you find this time, but you started a global business initiative for women, women-led ventures and entrepreneurs called SheEO,
Yeah.
right? Which I know recently went through a name change. Tell us
Yeah.
about that. Like, were
Yeah.
you just bored one day because you're not busy enough at
No,
Northwood?
no. So I mean, I always look at ways of like, how do you contribute to
Right.
something bigger or more? And that's how I met Linda. I was, like I said, on the board of a charity. And you always look at where, like, my idea of contributing is, what's not going to leave me crying where I bring it home with me, which is, so I will stay away from pet shelters and kids organizations and places like that, where you're like,
Right.
okay, it's too much of a heartache, now I'm home with 10 cats or dogs. Won't go very well in my home. But so it's like, okay, well, where do you contribute next? Because giving and becoming a part of something bigger is something I've done all my life. I've always had my first job where I wasn't paid. I was making money, but not for survival reasons. It was, our summer is always around Christmas, obviously. I would do, for my first 3 weeks of paycheck, I would go buy toys for an orphanage because I felt like, okay, well, I can do something to make someone else's life a little better.
Right.
And I'm sure many people felt the same at that time of the year. But for me, there was something personal where I'd go shop and I'd buy little things for however many kids they had. And then I'd go drop it off, and that's it. I never saw who got what. I don't know the kids. I never did. But it was a thing of like, okay, there's a world bigger than me out here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the reason. Women obviously don't get the same funding. They don't get the same. We're making changes now, obviously.
Right.
We're moving. And so an organization.
Finally
we're moving.
Yeah.
So, organizations like SheEO allow women to contribute. Like it's a member-funded organization. Every member puts some money into it. And then from there, these monies we end up loaning the money out
Right.
to anyone who's in a venture, and it's on a small, a lower interest rate that allows them. It's like a microfinancing,
Right.
is what it is.
Yeah.
And so I think organizations like that really help. And then there's also educational aspects of it. So yes, you have a business that is very much yours, that you are growing, but then you do something outside of that has an element of a social element to it.
Right.
It makes you realize that all your problems don't matter. So it's a selfish reason to join these things or to do these things. Right? I'm on the board of Little E as well, Little E Cafe, which is
Right.
an organization that provides neurodiverse kids with a barista job or trains them
Right.
so they can go, work at a coffee shop tomorrow and do things that, where they feel like they're contributing and they're a member of a society.
Right, having an impact.
Having an impact, and we all need something meaningful. And I join these things for selfish reasons because it makes me realize that all my problems don't matter. Right? So it's really that.
Or become way smaller, don't they?
Become way smaller.
Yeah.
They become way smaller because it's what you lose sleep on and what matters to you is somebody would do anything to have that problem tomorrow.
Yeah, it's true. I remember, years ago hearing, if everybody threw their problems in the middle of the table, whose problems would you leave with? And I remember thinking, I'll just take my own bag, thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, at least you know yourself and you know your bag.
And I know I can deal with them.
You know you can deal with it.
Yeah.
But then there's so many people in the world who would take your problem.
Right.
Who would take your problem today, because what your problem is, their problem is way worse. Like, I mean, look at what, has been going on in the world, whether it's Iran or anywhere. When you are surviving, fighting for survival, where you are getting bombed every day, the rest of our problems, like of getting tariffed and losing a business or not having a freight go up, is a very small problem to have, because I'm still alive. I'm not hiding, I'm not running, I'm not looking at my children and thinking, what do I do with them? Are they going to be alive tomorrow or not? You're not surviving. You're not fighting for survival. So I think there is something about looking into the social aspect of something and being a part of that, which I think every entrepreneur should.
And I'm a little biased, but I've been here most of my life. I haven't been in Canada all my life, but truthfully, I believe we're in the best country, and we are really in the best city and in the best country, right? In the best province. So.
How lucky are we?
Absolutely.
Right? And so, but then even within our city, there's many that aren't as fortunate.
It's true.
So,
absolutely.
So it's that. Because again, when you as you said, how fortunate are we to live in a place like this that has, it's one of the best cities, it's one of the best countries. So in living in that best place, we forget that there are people who, it's easy to look at our problems. Yeah. So easy to look at our problems and be like, oh, well, these are massive mountain of problems here.
Yeah.
When there's so many who can't get a basic breakfast.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Now, as we're getting close to the end of time, I have kind of a couple of questions I ask all my guests. So let's go to the first one. So, what do you wish someone would have told you at the start of your journey? If you were back looking to your younger self, and and those young entrepreneurs that are listening right now, what do you wish somebody would have told you?
Pay less attention to what anybody else says. So I wish I had a lot more confidence in who I was and what I did, and paid less attention to what everybody else thought and what everybody else said. We end up becoming our worst critique because we judge ourselves so harshly. We are so busy trying to make sure that we are seen a certain way and we're perceived a certain way, and buying the votes of everybody else.
Right.
And in doing so, we forget who we truly are. So you just start to live a life that you no longer relate to and you have struggles with. And so I think I was one of those people too, growing up, because you had so many pressures and demands from everywhere to be something different or to align to someone. So I think I would just say, don't be your worst critique. Be kind to yourself and don't let everybody else decide who you should be and how you should walk, how you should talk, or how you should live. You choose that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Great advice. Yeah. Stop listening to the naysayers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Too many of ththose.
All the time. Yeah. And sometimes they're related to you.
Usually they are. Mostly they are, I think.
So, my belief is that personal development and professional development are really one in the same. And so, what's been one of your favorite self-development books or tools that you've used?
Oh, many. I'm a reader. I listen to podcasts. I'm a junkie when it comes to information. My favorite book that I read is an entrepreneurial book, actually. It was Phil Knight's Shoe Dog. I read that book before I started my business. And while it's a biography of Phil Knight, it's not an autobiography, it's a biography of his.
Yeah.
It really allows you to look at your life, allows you to make yourself mentally stronger.
Right.
And that's what that did. So it was a really, to me, that's my number one book.
That's your number one book.
It's my number one book. And then, another book I really enjoyed that has had an impact on how I just organize my life and everything. It was called The Checklist Manifesto. And the Checklist Manifesto was written by somebody who was on the cusp of basically, is a neurosurgeon just trying to get his towards the end of his life, basically.
Right. I haven't read that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to pick that up.
So it's a neat way to say, okay, how do I organize things in my life?
Right.
Like what should my day-to-day look like?
Mm-hmm.
So these are the two books that I would highly recommend. But if you haven't read Phil Knight's Shoe Dog, gotta get a copy.
There we go.
It's worth every page.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing both those books, because You know, again, I mean, if somebody's struggling out there, I mean, it could be just a simple book or even a sentence in a book that could change everything, right?
Yeah, and as an entrepreneur too, because we are always used to comparing ourselves to others, because you do, right? We don't look at the failures, we look at the successes of people. No one remembers Edison for anything that failed before.
No.
We only remember him for his light bulb moment that, you know, we all celebrate today.
Exactly.
We don't see the 12 other ventures that people did that did not work. So when you read a biography of somebody who we look up to or brands that we knew growing up, I grew up with Nike. I don't think Nike existed before I did it, maybe, but I always knew Nike as a brand, even as a kid. So when you hear his struggles, it's a realization that, wait, hold on. There's somebody that's supposed to be like uber successful and have all the riches of the world as you think life would be just that. It's not.
It's not, no.
So it brings you back to that same social element that our problems aren't as big as we think.
True enough.
So
where can we find Northwater products?
online, we're in a lot of coffee shops and cafes. We're in hotels, but primarily like DeVille's coffee shop if you're in Calgary, in BC as well, Analog. We're in Phil and Sebastian, Edmonton. There's a bunch of places in Edmonton too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Again,
lots
coffee
of cafes,
shops.
lots of cafes and coffee shops. Italian markets, supermarkets like Lina's, and there's an Italian market in Loco, I think it's called, in Edmonton as well. And mostly hotels. We're primarily a hotel brand. And online.
Right.
Well.ca carries us too.
Oh, do they?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's, you know, I've really enjoyed our conversation. So I could go on for another half hour, truthfully, but you know, there's just so much to talk about.
Thank you.
But you know, you've shared some great nuggets, some great questions that people can ask themselves. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
You know, and again, wish you all the continued success
Thank
to you and Linda.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
yes,
you're welcome. Watch for our next episode in 2 weeks, and you've been listening to the Calgary Business Podcast, and I've actually had a great conversation here with Saawan Logan. She's the co-founder and CEO of local water company Northwater. So thank you so much for being with me.
Thanks for having me, Oliver.
Wonderful. Take
Appreciate
care.
it.